And there's no doubt something that's been in the news an awful lot lately is those 20-mile-per-hour speed limits brought in across a large space of the country. I think half the boroughs in London or more are seeing those that speed limit routinely on built-up areas. And, of course, in Wales on Sunday, it was across the board pretty much. If it's a 30-mile-per-hour zone in any sort of city, town or village, it's going to be down to 20 miles per hour. And now it's emerged that nearly half of all Britons live in areas where those schemes are in place or expected to come in a matter of months. 28 million drivers living in those local authorities. Well, let's talk about this with Alan Miller. He's co-founder of the Together Declaration and joins us now. Good morning to you, Alan.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Now, you and I first started talking, my listeners and viewers have got to know you when you were campaigning to sort of get, basically our social lives back, our lives back during lockdowns, to sort of get us back in bars and restaurants, nighttime economy and the like, and just get back to living our free lives. And then you started campaigning on things like, low traffic neighbourhoods, the LTNs, that are a blight of many people's lives, brought in during lockdowns by overzealous councils trying to stop people using their cars. And now it's about the 20-mile-per-hour zone and ULEZ and all of these restrictions. A lot of people feel there is a war on the motorist. But when it comes to 20-mile-per-hour zones, the argument is it's about saving lives. So why are you arguing against them?
Yeah, well, the argument about saving lives and we're doing it for your good has been a consistent argument where we've seen all sorts of blunt tools and impositions and restrictions unaccountable democratically. Nobody's asked for this. Nobody's voted for it. The low traffic neighbourhoods you mentioned were brought in under emergency traffic orders, actually also funded by the government initially, but they've stepped away from that and the Prime Minister's doing a review on them because everyone's campaigning, and thank you to viewers that have as well with Together and others. But this 20 mile per hour is part of a broader backdrop, which is really underpinned by net zero, the blunt tool that says we're going to have limits, restrictions, suffocations. We're not going to have dynamic transformation. We're not going to improve transportation. What we're going to do is we're going to say, get out of your car. Yeah. Walk and cycle. As David Lammy said, get on the train if you're a worker with your tools. And the whole idea is a contempt for the public, for working people, for people with families. Guised under, we're saving lives, we're looking after your health. Yeah. It's anti-scientific, it's anti-democratic, and frankly, Julia, these are the new demarcation lines between people who want their independence and freedom and autonomy and those bureaucrats that are now so far wide and with a chasm with the public. Yeah. And that's why we say, we want the public front and centre and to free our streets together. Yeah,
exactly. It's anti the real world. I mean, this is the thing. I've always thought, again, a lot of lockdown policies supported by the media and politicians and the technocrats. And again, a lot of these policies involving, everyone should be cycling. I mean, and it's not tens of thousands, it's hundreds of thousands and even millions and hundreds of millions of pounds that are funneled into a lot of these campaign groups to sort of push these agendas. And they're all from the laptop classes. They're from the tech class going, but I work from home. They often live in London. They live or centrally in the city where they've got great public transport links and they don't rely on their car. Like 80% of people in this country can't go anywhere without a car to get to work, get the kids to school, do the shopping. It's not an option without a car. It's an absolute necessity, not a luxury. An electric vehicle luxury they have sitting outside on the street occasionally. But they just live in a world where they don't understand how much people need these things, and also they need to be able to get around. Now, certainly in Wales, they've done studies in terms of, yes, they think it will save some lives. But the reality is the lives that are lost could be mostly saved by making sure 20-mile-per-hour limits are in place in the key areas where, for instance, around schools. Now, I don't know anyone who disagrees with lower speed limits and restrictions on cars around schools, particularly primary schools. It does save lives. It reduces congestion. That makes an awful lot of sense. And encouraging people not to pick up their kids from school or drive them to school when they don't need to. And we're all in favour of that. Good for the kids as well. But when it's brought in on, I was talking about this on the show earlier in the week. My local area, we've got a 6 lanes, so 3 on either side lane, major thoroughfare into London, and it's now down to 20 miles per hour. Now, half the time you'd be lucky to get to 20 miles per hour on that road. But when it's, say, at night, and you're driving along, there's no kids running across the road, the traffic lights are green, why on earth you should be sitting there chugging along at 20, keeping your foot on the brake pedal to make sure you're sticking at 20? Seems to me it's just about control rather than anything else.
It's absolutely about control. It's about surveillance. It's about fines. Mark Drakeford had one of the most oppressive lockdowns for the longest period of time and the most restrictive, also using similar language. It's all about saving us and disregarding some of the most fundamental principles that we hold so dear and we cherish in Britain, freedom, that we need to uphold. And that's why we're still campaigning. We would have loved to have wrapped everything up. But many of the trends that we saw during the policies around COVID have now been expanded on steroids even further. And we're told it's a public health emergency and crisis. It's an environmental crisis. And actually, on the one hand, we've got to have much better public services and public transport system. And we need a situation where we don't have just blunt tools, where we ignore consultations, we just impose things on the public. We tell, we have bureaucrats telling us all it's for our own good. As Mike Hakata in Haringey said, we're going to make it as difficult as possible for all of you who drive. And this really reflects contempt. And I think, Julia, over the next period, the British public, and particularly around net zero, which underpins all this, people haven't quite, what net zero really represents is an impact, damage to our cost of living, to wages, to jobs, to freedom of movement, to house building, energy. And it underpins all of this, like the plans around traffic, the C40 cities, 15-minute cities, low traffic neighbourhoods.
It's about limiting our lives and controlling our lives, not about making lives better. And anyway, we'll decide whether we want to save ourselves rather than saving and protecting us as well.